So Nuneaton Borough are currently sat bottom of the table of the National League North. They're a number of points from safety and they've not won many games at all this season. And overall it's been a very turbulent season for the club, who only actually reformed in 2008. This season though, they've nearly gone out of business a number of times and it still could happen. They've actually opened up an interesting opportunity as a way of trying to make money, but it's quite an interesting one. And we'll get into it in this video. This video is also sponsored by One Football. You can follow information from teams in the National League North as well as the National League using this app. So that's with scores, future fixtures, league tables, stats, all sorts of things. Links to download that app is in the top line of the description down below. So as I mentioned, Nuneaton Borough were liquidated in 2008 and reformed in the 8th tier. They rose up to the 5th tier and have now dropped back down to the 6th tier where they've been for a few years. Lee Thorne came in as an investor in 2014 and a year later he bought the club and was the owner. He instilled like a model at the club where they basically bring in young players and sell them on in the future for good fees, and that's how they sustain themselves. But over the last few years that hasn't really helped them much and they've not really been able to sell that many players on. It's not really seen them become as financially stable as they were hoping for. They got themselves into a lot of debt at the start of the current season. They sold the ground to Norman Smurthwaite, who is the owner of Port Vale. Now, because he's the owner of Port Vale, he can't become the owner of Nuneaton because you can't have an involvement directly at two separate English football clubs. So he is just the landlord, but in buying the club, they used that money to pay off debt because they had a winding up order happening in April 2018. So they survived through that. Then upon the ground being sold, Lee Thorne decided to leave the club, and that actually left the club with no directors and no chairman, which is a crazy thing for a football club at this level to have. It's just such an odd situation. Because of this, there are a number of problems that happened up until November where they finally got a new owner. Nick Hawkins took over, but yeah, before he came in, there was problems like the lawnmower wasn't working, so they couldn't cut the pitch properly. There were no lights in the changing rooms at times. The team talk had to be carried out in pretty much darkness, as well as a whole host of different problems. But anyway, Nick Hawkins coming in helped steer the club out of the immediate danger, did a good job of keeping the club alive at least. They had to cut back their budget completely to the point where they're spending very, very little on their squad. Hawkins actually a former footballer who lives around the Nuneaton area and he runs a refurbishment business and actually initially went into the club to basically do some stuff for his business, and he ended up learning more about the club and becoming the new owner, which is pretty crazy really. Then soon after this, back to Mr. Norman Smurthwaite, he decided that he was going to threaten legal action on Nuneaton because they hadn't paid some bills because he is their landlord. He threatened to pull some of the loan players that he'd sent from Port Vale over to Nuneaton. But anyway, the club made it through that, and fast forward to February 2019, the club has a huge revolving door of players. It seems like multiple players each week coming in and leaving the club. The Nuneaton Twitter at one point was basically just a carousel of articles of a player signing and a player leaving. And then Nick Hawkins announced that he was going to be stepping down as chairman of the club. He said he'd taken the club as far as he possibly could. He said the club would be best served in the hands of the people of Nuneaton. The club finds themselves £100,000 in debt, and they were looking for 10 investors to all take 10% shares of the club each and invest £10,000. But for the meantime, Hawkins transferred the shares from himself to Jimmy Ginelli, who is their manager. And he was actually only appointed a few weeks before, but he is actually a Nuneaton fan. The club clearly means lots to him, so it's just been left in his hands for the time being. And on the 19th of February, Nuneaton announced something that was a bit controversial, attracted a bit of media attention, and that is their open trials for their first team. Now, it's very rare at National League North level that clubs just announce that they're going to have an open trial that anyone can sign up for, and anyone can come and try and prove themselves at first team level. Now, it's obviously common for academy teams at National League North level to announce that they're going to have trials. That's a very, very common thing that happens, and pretty much every club does that. But for the first team, it's very rare. Now, you might first look at it and see that Nuneaton basically are desperate for players and they're just trying to get anyone together that will come and play pretty much for free. So they're trying to just get bodies in to get in their squad because they've got no money. And while this may be true, there's another reason why they're doing this trial that's probably even more important for them than that. So there's a maximum of 50 people that can sign up for these trials, and each of these 50 people have to pay £50 to take part. Some non-league footballers have basically pointed out that this is taking advantage of young ambitious footballers that want to try and move into full-time. But in the grand scheme of things, they need 100 grand to stay alive, and this is only going to give them 2.5%. It's a small percentage for all the controversy that it has created, but still when you're at that point, it does smack of desperation, of just a club trying to go down any route that they possibly can. It is a bit of thinking outside the box. You don't see this thing very often. Maybe it is the start of something that we'll see more in the future, because ultimately you could get some 45-year-old that's never played football in their life, that just fancies going and having a trial at a National League North football club just so they can say that they have done. Now, while Nuneaton are probably never going to sign a player like that, it benefits them because they're getting £50 from it. So when you look at it that way, it's a win-win for Nuneaton. I can see why they've done it, and I can see really that it's actually a relatively good idea. From a business point of view, that is, for a club that's in that situation, they just need to try and create money. The trial itself takes place on the 5th of March, and the players will go along in the afternoon, take part in a trial to try and earn a place in a team that will play in the evening against the current Nuneaton first team, which then in that game they'll have the opportunity to impress and try and earn themselves something at the club. Now, you may think that it's unlikely that players that are going to be at the level that Nuneaton want will be taking part in these trials, but you never know. It's an awkward time of the season where a lot of squads are full. Teams aren't really looking to strengthen at this point, so it might get a few players that have, for some reason, maybe they've been injured for the first half of the season, they might not be able to find a club and are now unable to find another club just normally. So they might actually go and take part in these trials, which might give Nuneaton a few little hidden gems. But anyway, let me know in the comment section down below what do you think of this situation. Do you think that Nuneaton have got a really good idea going here with these trials? Or do you think that they should not be allowed to charge £50 and is it exploiting young footballers? Let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, remember to that like button and click subscribe as well. We're trying to get to 15,000 subscribers by the end of the season. If you could help me get there, that would be absolutely awesome. And yeah, hope to see you next video, and thanks for watching.